All right, we are here with Marie Petridis, and she is an amazing artist, ceramicist, and I'm sure Greek philosopher and Hellenic enthusiast. She lives in Australia and she is participating in our group exhibition in March, which is Creating Eudaimonia, Spiritual Freedom. And we're so excited to have her as a part of the group of our women immigrants from Greece. And so, Marie, without further ado, do you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. So as Christina mentioned, my name is Marie Petridis. I'm 26 years old. I'm an artist and school teacher. I got my degree in art teaching a few years ago now, and I'm just trying to work on my own sort of art while teaching at the same time. Um, and just focusing on themes of like Hellenic nature, I guess. It's always been something that I've been drawn to. And yeah, I paint, I draw, I sculpt, just do a bit of everything where I can,
I love
which
it.
is
I
like
love
really fun. Um, Not always the most decisive person in my practice, but I think that's why I've got so many mediums that I work with and I explore different things all the time. So it's can be a little bit daunting, but also pretty exciting as well,
it.
not
I
to
love
be
it.
limited.
I love it. And really quick too, I know that you've been doing some really cool, like collaborative works of art in Australia. Like, can you tell us a little bit about that project and like the name of the project and like what it's about and like what you've been doing? Like, you've been up to some cool stuff.
Yeah, I've been up to a few things lately. A few of my friends started an exhibition called Prika,
Okay.
which was a culmination of like photography, fashion, and journalism, which um was basically based on like the diaspora and collecting items from our grandparents and like inherited items and what's going to happen to them after the oldies have passed away, and like what can we do as our sort of generation to sort of keep their legacy going.
Mm-hmm.
And so my involvement in that was I created or I helped create like the publication for the exhibition,
Cool.
which was yeah, a little bit of graphic design work, a little bit of marketing, and yeah, putting together a really cool, fun, interesting like book for people to take with them during the exhibition, which I really love doing
I
and
love
I'd
it.
like to do more of. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Uh,
Yeah, that was really fun.
Wait, can you explain what the word diaspora, is that what you said? Can you explain like what that word means?
So it's basically like um our grandparents who have come from Greece like to Australia, um like their sort of legacy and what they have sort of instilled in us.
Oh, I love that. I love that word. You know, it's like I've heard of that word obviously, and it's like it's thrown around a lot as a Greek person. But yeah, it's like the legacy and the momentum and like the mementos, that people bring with them from Greece to like remember, their culture, their homeland. It's like all of that, like physical objects, memories, moments. And that's really like what this show is about and what we're trying to accomplish with this exhibition is like showing how we're preserving our heritage and our culture and, exuding the energy and love for Hellenicism and how it's like woven into our daily lives like every single day here and at home where we are in America, Australia. It's like it's woven into our life even though we're not physically in Greece, even though like our grandparents might have immigrated from Greece, it still like literally pulses through our veins. So I think that's really cool that like you guys are doing that project. I feel like it's like it totally goes with the show that we're putting on in Chicago. So it's just so amazing that you're able to participate and be one of the exhibiting artists. It's going to be super, super cool. Um,
Mm.
I'm so excited. Anything else? Do you wanted to like sprinkle or like tell us like about it?
Um, yeah, like I just love how with this show that we're participating in now, and like with the one I was talking about earlier, it's just like shows, you know, we all have this passion for similar themes, and
Mhm.
although we didn't grow up there, yeah, like you were saying, we didn't grow up there, or um, you know, maybe our parents didn't live there, but our grandparents did. But yeah, it's such like an important part of our lives. And I feel like the Greeks do this really well, where we keep our tradition and our culture very close to us.
Mhm.
Whereas a lot of, I don't know, there's a lot more cultures that don't do it as,
Religiously almost or like
yeah, like as religiously as we do it. I don't know how to
yeah,
explain,
it's
I
true.
guess,
It's
what
so
I,
interesting. Yeah, I mean it's you're right. It's like woven in our veins. Like we can't let go of it. Like even, you know, wherever land we're living on, it's like in us, pulsing.
yeah.
And it's
It's
like
like
we
it's such a proud thing.
yes, yes. Definitely. We are very proud of our heritage. And it's just like, and we feel like the energy of God and like the nature, the spirituality. I feel like it's like this ancient spirit within us that's like exuding. And it just like, it's like a hamster. Like someone
Yeah.
recently was like, "You're Greek. That's why you're like that." And I was like, "Oh," because us Greeks, we have this like passionate energy to
Hmm.
you know, preserve these traditions and cultural themes. And it's just, I think it's really beautiful. So, Marie, we have to ask your first ever memory of art when you were growing up, when you were young, you know, maybe it was like your grandparent or your parent or at school, some sort of like memory or moment where you were like, oh my gosh, I am obsessed with creating things, or just like, I love art.
Well, I guess I've always sort of been interested in art since I was really little. Like I love drawing, I love painting, anything creative. I loved it. Um, even like when I was thinking about this question earlier, I was sort of thinking, what is my earliest memory of art, and when did I first interact with it and know that I love it? And the first thing that came to my mind was when I was younger, my auntie used to take me to the National Gallery of Victoria that we have here.
Mhm.
And she told me that whenever she took me there, I would just stare at this sculpture and I would just never want to leave, and I would just want to keep staring at it. And when she had told me, I thought it was pretty interesting because at the time I had no sort of interest in sculpture. When I
Mhm.
was maybe she told me when I was like a late teen, but I was like, I don't even like sculpture. Like I don't even do it. I don't know anything
Mhm.
about it. Like how was I so mesmerized by this, you know, sculpture in an art gallery? And now it's like my biggest passion in art is just to create like forms and sculpt, and I'm really inspired by it now, which I think is pretty interesting how it's come like full circle.
Yeah, yeah, that
Um,
is really cool. I love that too
yeah.
because like when you're a child, like your subconscious mind gets formed between like the ages 1 and 7, I think they say. So it's like really interesting how when you're a kid, like your heart and soul like intuitively gravitates towards things. And it's like that's like who you are, you know, and then as a child you like know who you are, but then society like trains you to be something else, and then it's like this coming back to that child within yourself and like recognizing like those passions and seeing those things again, you know, and like catching on to what your inner child was attracted to. I think that's really
Yeah.
cool. I love that. I love it.
Hmm.
I love these stories. And so tell us more about like your creative journey into like pursuing art full time and pursuing a career and teaching art and creating art. Like when you were in high school, like did you have like what was that moment, I guess, like when you were like, oh, like this is for me, like I want to pursue this.
was actually like pretty interesting how it came about. So when I was at school, when I was in my last year of high school, I did 2 art subjects and I really loved it. They were my top subjects. And I decided that I wasn't going to stick with art for when I finished school, and I was going to go into something a little bit less creative. I wanted to do criminology.
Nice.
So when I finished school, I went to uni for half a year to do criminology. And I
Wow.
was like, this is not for me. I did
Yeah.
not want to sit at a desk all day and just type things up and, you know,
Hmm.
be in the office.
I
And I
feel.
thought, what can I do instead? And I always loved fashion. So I enrolled myself into a fashion course for a year and a half. And the thing that drew me most towards fashion was like the art side of it. So
Yeah.
then I was like, maybe I should do an art course. So I left that. And I sort of had to think a little bit more logically at that point of, you know, if I travel, can I have this job? You know, what is it, a job that I guess will, you know, be easy to find or make me money over, you know, however long. And I decided that art teaching would probably be the best logical job for me to fall into.
I love it.
Um, yeah, but I just feel like I'm slowly enjoying more of like making my own stuff and trying to sort of go back to that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I feel that. I went to school too and I was like, what am I doing? Like, where are we going with this journey? Like I was like taking art classes like for fun as like a joke, like just like for fun.
Yeah.
And I ended up really, really enjoying it. And that same thing for me too. I was just in education classes. You know, I had a hot second where I wanted to be an environmental scientist. But again, it's like my brain, it's all numbers and spreadsheets, and that's just not fun for me. Like I don't enjoy that. And I was like, mm. And so that's when I too was like, I need to make art. I want to make this my life. I want to make this my vocation in life and my passion. And I love that our stories are so like similar and fun, but it's
Yeah.
like combining like the teaching aspect too. It's like obviously it's like a means to create wealth for your family and for yourself, but it's also fun. And you know, I mean, it's like
Yeah.
you get to be creative at work and you get to share that love and passion for creativity with your students. And so I'm sure your students really like appreciate and love that you're, you know, taking it a step further even outside of your teaching career, but like you're working on paintings, you're working on these cool projects, you know, you're seriously genuinely passionate about the work that you're in. And I think that there's something to be said about that because not a lot of people in today's world are so deeply connected to their profession. And I think that's why I love speaking about our practice and our careers because people find it so inspirational that we love what our work. You know, it
Mm.
feels almost illegal sometimes to say that we love our work so much, you know, in a world where, you know, people tend to hate their jobs. So it's just kind of fun that we get to love what we do. And I love hearing your story and, you know, loving the similarities. So,
Mm.
Marie, do you want to talk to us about the artwork that you're creating for the show and like the piece of work behind you and like the inspiration behind it? How did you come up with that idea? You know, I see like the vessels and everything. So do you want to just like tell us like what your thought process was and like the creative process, like with the composition and like the subject matter and like just walk us through what your brain thinks about when you're designing this work of art.
Okay. So when I'll talk about this piece first.
Sure, sure.
Uh,
Or
when I
whatever
first,
makes sense in your
yeah,
if something like happened first and it like led you to that, just like however the
okay,
story makes sense.
all right. Um, yeah, so with this piece here, it's taken a while to sort of like name the piece, but I've gone with granddaughter, which means to hold or to carry.
I
I've
love.
got a few pieces in this collection with different colorways and different vessels, just sort of, I'm still sort of developing it, I guess.
Mhm.
But my initial idea for this piece came from me loving sculpture and loving pottery and creating my own, and then thinking of how I could apply that to a canvas.
Mm.
And instead of sort of going for the route of like a textured art, which I think a lot of people are gravitating towards,
Mhm.
I sort of wanted to go for something a bit different. So I decided to paint some vases, and I think the thing that stands out about this piece is the composition of it,
Mhm.
because I feel like I never really see um like we see vases and we see pottery around, but we never sort of see it in this sort of way, I would
Yeah,
say. Like,
yeah, and I agree. It's like a grid, like a chessboard,
yeah.
very geometric, but the forms are super organic. So I know I get what you're saying, and I love that
Mm.
creativity, behind that. But keep going. What else?
It does feel like a grid in like the process of it, because I'm taping the canvas down. I'm, you know, ruling out all the different sections, like where's this going to go, where's that going to go. So it does feel a little bit methodical, which I really like about it. And I like that in my process, because sometimes I can be a little bit indecisive when I'm going too abstract with things,
Mhm.
especially on canvas. Um, which I guess leads me into when I'm creating forms or when I'm creating sculptures, like I don't think about it at all. I'm just doing whatever I feel, how I think it should look. I sort of let the material I use guide my process, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Um, which I just feel like there's a lot more possibility in that sense than I have experienced with canvas.
Mm-hmm.
So this is another one of my pieces.
Nice.
Um, it's made out of plaster of Paris. Um, so I started creating these pieces out of plaster um, in my second or third year of uni. Um, one of my teachers who um, I had for an art subject is a sculptor, and she introduced me to this medium. And it was one that I found a little bit tricky at first, but then I loved working with it, and it's something that I've continued working with for the last 5 years now.
Cool. So
Um,
was it like a mold? Like, did you have to make a mold and pour the plaster into it? Or no?
so basically, what I do is I have been collecting like random containers or things that are like a bit blocky, and
Okay.
I mix up the plaster, I pour it in there, I let
Okay.
it sit, or I let it set, and then I just carve away at it. So sometimes I
Oh,
might draw a shape or a line on there, start carving that out, and then I just let it flow. And you can sort of see it just like transitions quite easily around the
yeah,
board.
totally. And it's like
And
good.
that's something I love doing. I just like really zone out when I'm sculpting and when I'm carving away, which is a lot of fun.
I know. I love that. I love when you can just get lost in the process and you don't like you're not like thinking about like what the end product will look like, but you're just like letting it happen and it
Yeah.
shows. And I think yeah, that's like really cool. I mean, I wasn't sure because I've done ceramic classes and worked with plaster in the past, and it was like we had to like make the thing out of clay and then
Mm.
like, oh, I guess then we would make a mold out of plaster. So no, never mind. That was like it was like a flip flop. It was like like with ceramics, you could make plaster molds, and then
Yeah.
put the ceramic in, and you can create like any kind of ceramic shape, but the end goal is for it to be a fired ceramic piece. So
Yeah.
that was kind of like where my mind went when you said plaster. I was like, oh, yeah, that's really cool though. But that's like a
Yeah.
really not unconventional medium to be working in. And I think it's really cool that your professor, kind of put you in that direction and you're kind of just going with it. And I would be curious to see in the future for you to carve out like a vase with plaster.
Hmm.
I don't
Yeah, that would
know.
be cool, I guess.
I don't know, just an idea, but maybe that could be something you could do in the future. Who knows?
Yeah.
I don't know. Um, and two, the grid method, I get what you mean. It's like very methodical. It is very thought out. It's like you could tell that there was a lot of intention and like planning that composition. And I think as like creatives and as artists, like our mind is always like flowing with ideas, and abstraction can feel like really hard and difficult when it's like your mind is just like all over the place. So it's like, how do we create this structure in our work that feels comfortable and like safe and like strategic, and creates like rhythm and harmony, but is like this, organic thing. And I think you did a nice job of like mixing these like antique, like ancient vessels with like this modern take, and it's just like this really cool like mash of and ancient and modern, geometric and organic. It's just like this really cool like juxtaposition. But Marie, I wanted to ask too, like, do you know like what was like the cultural like significance for you wanting or feeling a call to these vases? Like, is there a story behind them, or like something that inspired you to like want to do vases? Like, do you have vases in your house, or when you visited people or at museums? Like, what's the story? Can you like
Well, it's sort of hard to pinpoint, I guess, what inspired me to do like vases specifically. But in the past like few years, I've been randomly collecting little Greek sort of artifacts from grandparents, or even going into op shops and finding little like Greek token things.
love
And
that?
my grandparents have a few um sort of like vessels with prints on them from Greece.
Oh, cool.
Um, I should have brought one for an example, but yeah, just like I've always loved the shape and like discovering different sort of
Yeah.
shapes of how we can sort of create a vessel or a
Hmm.
vase. But
Yeah.
yeah, when I make my work, I always sort of have like my Greek heritage in the back of my mind. So I never really create anything that doesn't tie back to like a Greek theme, I would say. Even with this piece here, like although it is abstract, like I would say that the material sort of looks like marble. And
Hmm.
that's what I love about working with this, because it reminds me of like Greek marble, and like reminds me of the Parthenon, reminds me of other like ancient artifacts that I've seen in Greece and like in Kykladik sort of like museums, and I've always just liked that and been drawn to it. So it felt like a logical step to take with my own artwork.
I love it. I love it. It's like you're totally like pulling from inspiration from our roots and from history. It's like these vases, these shapes are like originated in ancient Greece, and it's like they were used, like ceramics originated there. And I think it's really cool that there's so many different functions, so many different shapes. And then again, like the columns and the marble, it like naturally occurs in the islands on the earth, and like that material was so like accessible to the ancient Greeks, and they used it and they sculpted from it. And you know, that process, it feels very like ancient and natural. And I think that's really, really special and really cool that we're weaving all these stories and narratives. And even like now in your modern day, like in your day to day, like you have this interest, you know, and you see them in your grandparents' house, like the vases, it's like that's cool. Like you're going to like random thrift stores and finding vases. Like I love that. Like I do that too, but I never like thought about it in a way of like, oh yeah, these are like Greek inspired vessels, but I do too. I like search out like really cool vessels and I like collect them. Like I think it's just like in us and it's really, really, really special and cool. I love it. So you too, like I know, can you tell us like about like some of your own like memories of being in Greece and like what you've experienced when you were there and like just like your favorite memories?
Mhm. So every time I've gone to Greece, I've sort of like felt a bit different each time, if that makes sense. So first time I went to Greece, I was quite young. All I sort of remember about it was like seeing family and, you know, just holidaying, being around the beach and having a lot of fun with my cousins and meeting different people that I had never met before
Mm-hmm.
and feeling like, I don't know if you have the same sort of experience, but my grandparents' siblings are all in Greece. So on both sides of my family, both my grandparents are like the only sibling here in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
So it was crazy like meeting family on the other side of the world and seeing the similarities to my grandparents here.
Wait, what
Um,
part of Greece are your grandparents from?
oh, they're kind of like all over the place. So I've got a yard from Nafpakto, which is near Patra.
Nice,
Um, my papu is from Iraklio in Crete.
nice.
And then on the other side of the family, my papu is from Katerini, which is up north in Greece, and my is from Thessaloniki
Oh,
as
cool.
well. So
Love it. Like
I
Crete,
feel like
Thessaloniki,
cover a bit of
Patra, like all over
yeah.
the place. Wait, okay, sorry we're kind of going on a little off-topic tangent here, but
Yeah, that's okay.
how did your grandparents all meet if they were all from these different villages?
Well, they all met here in Australia.
Oh, so they came to Australia first as teenagers and then they
Yeah.
met?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's interesting. And so is there like a really big Greek community in Australia?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Massive.
I was
Yeah.
asking you where your grandparents were from because in my yaya's village, it's Kandila, it's outside of Tripoli, and one of my tios, and he immigrated to Australia. So I have uncles
Oh,
in Australia. I have family in Australia. So I was
yeah.
like, are we like from? Can you imagine?
Yeah. There's so many Greeks here, and like um I think in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, so many of them migrated over here, which I'm sure is the same in America.
Yes, yes, that's the same era, which is really, really, really cool. I'm wondering too, like, did your grandparents ever tell you like stories of their past and why they left Greece and like their childhood?
Hmm. Not so much when we were younger, but I feel like now because I'm more interested in it, I ask a lot more questions and like sometimes they do open up about things and you know, I'm sure there's a lot of stories that they sort of keep to themselves as well.
Hmm.
But yeah.
Just because of the history and the time period that they did come over, I think it's interesting to notice and to talk about their stories and their past because um it's like that time period there was war, there was like it was like the end of World War II, and so there were, you know, Italians and Germans and, you know, a lot of like invaders in their country, and you know their villages were getting burned and there was massive famine, you know, so it was really difficult in Greece during those years.
Hmm.
And, you know,
It's
that's the reason why a lot of them migrated at the time that they did to seek out a better life and to find, you know, to get education and resources to their future generations. And my grandparents, they tell stories all the time about like their childhood and like my house got burnt down and just like crazy things that they experienced. So I was just curious if they've ever
Yeah. I
stories.
feel like it sort of gets a bit emotional as well. Like sometimes my eldest will tell me things and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe that, you went through that, or, you know, you overcame that sort of situation, and now you're here and things are so different. I mean, things are so different there now too, but it's
Right.
just like easy to think that like Maya was 18 getting on a boat coming to Australia and like not knowing anybody,
Mm-hmm. Same.
and
I
then
know.
sort of like
Like,
working it out as she went along, and you know experiencing things like racism and loneliness as well, which I
right.
think is like something that maybe wasn't brought up much back then because they just sort of
Mhm.
dealt with it. And
Right.
you can see how they are now. Like it's just made them so much more resilient. Like they'll never complain, and they just get on with things. And even though they're older, like they never make it an issue,
Mhm.
probably because of like everything they've gone through. It's
Right.
kind
They
of
have
crazy.
like another layer of like resilience and like
Yeah.
strength and
One
courage.
that a lot of us will never sort of be able to understand ever.
Right. And we're so soft here. Like my
Yeah.
went through so much and like even here in America, like they worked so hard for what they had and they would save everything and they would they didn't have resources growing up. And so I don't know if you have this similar experience, but I've talked to a lot of Greek people and their grandparents all have like hoarding problems. This is
Oh,
like
yeah.
a little off topic, but
Yeah.
like I'm like, this is not just like they're like, oh my grandpa's so weird. He hoards every piece of garbage, every plastic bag, every, potato sack, every this, every that. Like he cannot throw anything away. And I was like, yeah, it's not unique to your grandpa. My grandma's like that. She
Mm,
saves every jar, every little piece, because to them, like these resources are so valuable because they
mm.
literally grew up with nothing. And so the
Yeah.
fact that they like have all this stuff, they like hold on to it and they keep it. And so it's like this generational thing. So I don't know. Do you go ahead? Were
Yeah.
you
Yeah. Yeah. It's so similar here. It's almost like I feel horrible sometimes because I'm like, we just look at things as so disposable, and when they were growing up, they had nothing and like sort of valued everything. So
right?
such a
So,
disconnect there, like things that are important to us, and it just shows like it's like a sign of the times now. It's
mhm.
like how we're
And
living.
it's so true. Like we're living in this age of like overwhelm and overconsumption, and it's like over like too much information. Like it's like we have TikTok and Instagram just shoving knowledge and information like down our throats every second of every day. And it's like we have unlimited resources to, YouTube and podcasts and just like, media. There's overconsumption, but then as well, it's like clothing, like people like it's like we have way too many clothes, way too many objects. Like clutter is, honestly, like mental clutter, physical clutter, it's a pandemic in this
Yeah.
2025. And so I think we can learn a lot from our ancestors and like becoming minimalist and like having less and being content and joyful with having less things. And I really do consciously try to practice that in my own life
Mm.
here. Like I really, make it a point not to shop if I don't need it or not to like keep things that I'm not using, and it's like I really do like have this minimalist mindset because I think that there's so much joy that comes out from your life when you declutter. You don't have
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
a plethora of objects.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, making sure that the objects that you do have are meaningful and are telling a story too, you know? Because I was
Mm.
talking earlier with Despina. She's another artist that's going to be in our show with us, and she does ancient pottery and ceramics. And she was like saying how, like, you know, when you're living with art, it's like you're living with like this historical object that adds value to your life, you know, it brings meaning and brings stories, and it's like it's beautiful to look at and it makes you excited and happy. And so, you know, in this day and age where you could go to Target and buy a random vase, you know, or go to Home Goods. I don't know what you guys have over there, but you know, like a big,
Yeah.
yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Nice. You know, but you could just like go buy a random vase and like decorate your house with it, but it's not meaningful. It's just like it just doesn't have the same weight to it and the same depth and the same, you know, it's not created by like a real person. But we were also saying it probably is created by a real person, but they're not getting compensated or recognized for it, you know, or paid
Yeah.
properly for it. So it's just like when you're supporting these artisans and creatives, you know, and you're having their work in your home, it's like you're bringing an energy and a soul and a spirit with this handmade item, you know, that's carrying this deep history and this weight. And it's like, it's worth having in your house, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something that like is very hard, I guess, as an artist to come to terms with too, because a lot of the time people will value like the cheaper option and just go with what's trending over, you know, something that's handmade or something that's more thoughtful because of the price, you
Exactly.
know,
Right.
which
And
is,
it's
which
like the
is so problematic because, you know, people will happily buy like 10 things that are $10 over one thing that's $100. That's actually like, you
well,
know,
and I think it plays into like our instant gratification and like our obsession with like quick dopamine hits. And like, you know, it's like everyone just wants like that quick convenient fix. But, you know, our job though as artists is to educate people, you know, and to share these stories and to show like the deeper spiritual, you know, connection and meaning and stories and narratives, and you know, and really the people who are meant to appreciate it will. And you know, fine art is not, I guess, accessible to everyone, but that's kind of like what we're trying to do in our mission, is like showing people through storytelling, through creating work that is accessible. You know, I do prints that are accessible, you know, so it's like finding ways to make it accessible to everyone and showing people that this is something worth investing in. Like you save up money to invest in gold that is like a very high value object. It's like that's why you should also like save and, you know, invest in fine art. They call fine art an investment because it really is. It's like this, it's like you're saving up for this, like to add like culture and depth and spirituality and meaning and all of this beauty into your life. And that's invaluable. You know, this beauty that we're creating and the history and, you know, the handmade touch, it's like this invaluable thing that is worth, you know, having in your home so you can admire every day and build your own collection. So I think that's really special. I love it. Well, any other thing you want to add before we kind of wrap things up?
um,
Are you excited for
yeah,
March?
I'm so excited. Yeah.
I'm really excited too. I wish that you could be here in person. Maybe we'll have to like FaceTime you in on March 1st.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Maybe we will. Honestly, we're doing a live panel discussion at the gallery from 3 to 5. So all the artists are going to be at the gallery. We're going to be chatting about the work and having these conversations. So maybe we will FaceTime you in. We'll be in touch
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
I think that'd be cool. So we want you to be in that conversation with us. And then after the artist panel discussion, we're going to have a reception from 5 to 8. And it's going to be really great for us to all mingle and see the work and admire the pieces and read about the stories. Every piece is going to have like a little piece of writing attached to it. So you can really like sit with the work and, you know, read the meaning on the walls and really indulge yourself in this almost like museum experience. at the gallery. So it's going to be really, really great. Thank you so much, Marie, for being here. And if you guys want to connect with her, make sure to follow her on Instagram. I'm going to have it tagged down below where you're watching this on YouTube. So make sure to connect with her on Instagram. And is there anywhere else you want people to connect with you or find you?
No, Instagram is perfect.
Perfect. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much for
And
everything.
thanks for including me in all of this, and I'm really excited.
Same here. I'm so excited. All right. Thank you for watching, everyone.